All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing a really special deep dive into one of Yu-Gi-Oh's most controversial, most frustrating, and, you know what, most fascinating strategies, the stun deck. Look, whether you love them or you hate them, you absolutely have to understand how they work to compete. Oh man, we have all been there. You've got the perfect hand, your combo is all lined up, you are ready to completely take over the game, and then you squint at a card on your opponent's field, and it hits you. Your entire turn is just over before it even started. Your monsters are useless, you can't special summon, your graveyard might as well not exist. It is a feeling of just complete helplessness. Okay, so let's really get into this, because that feeling of being totally locked out of the game, that's not some accident. It is a meticulously crafted game plan. And that right there is the core philosophy of a stun deck, a strategy built from the ground up specifically to prevent you from playing Yu-Gi-Oh at all. So in this masterclass, we are going to break it all down. We're going to start by defining the strategy, then we'll take a trip through its long and storied history, we'll dissect all the top modern decks, and look at the specific cards that make them tick. And then, most importantly, we're going to show you how to fight back. And we'll wrap it all up by figuring out why the strategy just refuses to go away. Okay, first things first, let's get our terms straight. What exactly is a stun deck, and what makes it so different from other defensive strategies? Well, it really all comes down to its core philosophy. The key word here, the most crucial part, is that stun is inherently anti-meta. It takes a hard look at what the most popular and powerful decks are trying to do. Special summon a million times, activate monster effects, use the graveyard, and it builds a fortress of cards that just says nope to all of it. It is literally designed to punish the very mechanics that define the modern game. Now, this is a really important distinction. People lump stun in with its cousins, stall and control, but they're totally different beasts. Stall just wants to, stall, and wants to survive long enough to win some other way, like decking you out. Control wants to trade cards with you, one for one, until it just has more stuff left. But stun is different. It's all about active disruption plus aggressive pressure. It doesn't just want to stop you, it wants to stop you while it's slowly poking you to death with a 2,000 attack monster. And this strategy isn't new, not by a long shot. In fact, stun has been a thorn in the side of meta players since the earliest days of the game. So let's take a quick walk through its evolution. The philosophy has always been the same: stop the opponent. But man, the tools have changed dramatically. It started out pretty simple, just punishing you for summoning small monsters. Then it evolved into using a single, terrifying boss monster to control everything. And eventually, it became laser-focused on shutting down the single most powerful mechanic in the entire game, the special summon. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. King Tiger Wanghu. This guy was the original anti-meta king. Back in a time when decks like Blackwings were all about swarming the field with little guys to get their combos going, Wanghu was an absolute nightmare. Every single time they tried to start their engine, poof, Wanghu would just blow their monster up on summon. It was so simple, so effective, and just infuriating to play against. And then came this beast. Light and Darkness Dragon, or LAD as we called it, took stun to a completely different level. Its effect was just brutal. The first time you tried to do anything, spell, trap, monster effect, LAD would just negate it. And it could do this multiple times. This meant your opponent had to burn through card after card, sometimes their entire hand, just to get this one dragon off the board. This is a perfect example of that resource drain that modern stun still relies on today. And that brings us to the modern philosophy of stun. As the game got faster and faster, stun had to adapt, and boy did it adapt. Enter Fairy Stun, what I like to call the perfect storm of no. Just imagine this board. Archlord Christia comes down, and boom, nobody can special summon. At all. Then you've got Thunder King Ryo on the field, so you can't even search your deck for an answer. And just for good measure, if you have anything left, Joujin the Spiritualist can wipe it all away and add another layer of lockdown. Facing this trio was basically an instant surrender for most combo decks. So, fast forward to today. What does stun look like in the 2026 meta? Well, the old ways have evolved. These decks aren't just simple one-trick ponies anymore. They are hybridized, they're resilient, and they are specifically engineered to take apart today's best decks. Today's stun decks are surgical. They know the exact choke points of decks like Kashtira, Runic, and Branded. They don't just randomly flip floodgates and hope for the best. No, they use powerful consistency tools to find the perfect lockdown card for the exact deck they're playing against.
First up, we've got the purest form of stun out there, Inspector Border Stun. The game plan is, well, it's brutally simple. Step 1, summon Inspector Border. All of a sudden, nobody's getting very many monster effects. Step 2, use a card like Pot of Prosperity to dig for the perfect floodgate to lock your opponent out completely. Maybe a summon limit, maybe a skill drain. Step 3, protect that lock with an iron wall of solemn judgments and strikes. It's simple, it's effective, and it is incredibly frustrating to play against.
Now we've got the most successful version in recent memory, Runic Stun. This deck is just genius, really. The Runic engine itself generates this insane amount of card advantage with its field spell, Runic Fountain. It plays almost entirely on the opponent's turn, which means it can use floodgates like Summon Limit without hurting itself at all. So it locks you down, and then it wins by milling your deck away. It is just a fantastic example of a hybrid strategy that uses a powerful engine to fuel a classic lockdown. Next is Labrynth. If Runic wins by drowning you in cards, Labrynth wins through sheer resilience. It's a trap deck that basically doesn't care if you destroy its back row, because all its traps just replace themselves. The welcome Labrynth cards give it constant disruption, and it absolutely adores skill drain. And here's the really clever part. Its big monsters have powerful effects that activate in the graveyard, completely dodging skill drain's negation. That is a masterclass in deck building.
Flow Wanderees is, well, it's a weird one. It's kind of like a pseudo-stun deck. It works by normal summoning on both players' turns, so it could not care less about a card like Summon Limit. Its boss monster, M-Pen, acts like a one-sided skill drain against Link monsters, and it can main deck Dimension Shifter, which is an auto-win against so many decks. What's really fascinating is that, because of how it plays, it's a stun deck that actually beats other stun decks.
And finally, the immortal Golden Boy himself, Eldritch. This deck is all about recursion. The Golden Lord is this constant threat that keeps coming back from the graveyard to deal with your cards. His traps are just as resilient, banishing themselves to set new ones. It is an engine that just refuses to die, which makes it the perfect, grindy foundation to build a lockdown on top of, with cards like Skill Drain and Gozen Match. So, how do all these different decks end up doing the same thing? Well, they're all pulling from a shared pool of incredibly powerful cards we call floodgates. These are the tools of the trade, the individual pieces that come together to form that unbreakable board. On the monster side, you've got the real heavy hitters. Fossil Dyna is about as subtle as a brick. It just says, no special summoning. And that's enough to end a lot of turns right there. Inspector Border, as we've talked about, turns off monster effects, the engine of the entire modern game. The barrier statutes are a little sneakier, locking you into just one attribute. And Banisher of the Radiance, it just completely shuts down the graveyard, turning the game into an old-school playground fistfight. And then we have the back row, the heart and soul of any stun deck. Cards like Dimensional Fissure and Macrocosmos are just brutal graveyard hate. Gozen Match and Rivalry of Warlords can break boards by forcing you to stick to one attribute or type. Of course, there's the infamous Skill Drain, the monster effect negator that single-handedly wins games. Summon Limit stops combo decks cold. And finally, Solemn Judgment, the original no button that protects your whole setup. It's the ultimate insurance policy. Okay, we've defined them, we've seen their history, we've broken down all their modern tools. Now for the most important part. How in the world do you beat them? Let's get into the complete counter guide. All right, listen up, because this is the most crucial takeaway. There is no single silver bullet for stun. Beating these decks requires you to identify which version you're up against and attack its specific weakness. A card that absolutely crushes Inspector Border Stun might do nothing at all against Runic Stun. You have to be smart. All right, your number one universal counter is high-impact back row removal. Stun decks need multiple floodgates to stay on the board. You can't just clear one. You need cards that clear them out in chunks. Lightning Storm, Harpy's Feather Duster, these are fantastic. Even a simple Twin Twisters can be a huge tempo swing. And then there's Evenly Matched. Oh boy, forcing your opponent to banish their entire board face down is often just an instant win. It's absolutely brutal. Next up are cards that just don't care about the lockdown. A monster like Inspector Border stops you from activating monster effects. But tributing it for a kaiju isn't an effect. It's just how you summon it. So you can get rid of the problem without ever starting a chain. It's brilliant. Similarly, a simple Book of Moon can flip a monster face down, turning off its continuous effect and giving you a window to make your move. These cards let you surgically remove the biggest problem on their board. You know, some entire archetypes are just naturally good against stun. We've already talked about how Labrynth can outgrind them and how Fluenderies just plays by a different set of rules. Other top decks have built-in counters too. Runic can play around a lot of things with its quick play spells, and Kashtira has that unique ability to banish back row face down so it can never be used again. Sometimes the best strategy is just picking a deck with a good matchup from the start. And finally, do not underestimate hand traps. Look, stun decks don't have long combo lines, but their consistency, that's their Achilles heel. They're so reliant on their pot cards, prosperity, duality, extravagance, to find their floodgates. Hitting one of those with an Ash Blossom or a Droll and Lockbird can be absolutely devastating, often leaving them with a hand of useless traps and no monster. So here's the key. You attack their consistency, not just their board. So, after all this, why is stun still here? Despite constant changes in the game, this strategy remains a really potent and relevant force in any competitive environment. Let's just look at the numbers. So in a best-of-one format like Master Duel, where you can't side deck in specific counters, stun just thrives. An unprepared opponent is pretty much a defeated opponent. And a 30% win rate in a format that diverse, that is nothing to scoff at. It just proves how powerful it is to catch someone off guard. The sheer size of the toolbox is another huge factor. With over 15 powerful, viable floodgates available, stun players can always adapt. If one strategy gets figured out, they just pivot to another set of cards that attacks the meta from a different angle. The toolbox is just incredibly deep, and it's always growing. And you can see that adaptability in the sheer number of viable decks. This proves that stun isn't just one deck, it's a philosophy. From border stun to Runic to Labrynth, that core idea of just saying no is expressed through so many different powerful archetypes. That ensures it survives even when one specific deck falls out of favor. And ultimately, this is why stun endures. Stun is the great equalizer in Yu-Gi-Oh! It doesn't care how cool your 15 summon combo is if you can't even make your first move. It serves as a check on the entire meta, punishing decks that get too greedy or too linear. It forces every single player to be prepared. So the question is no longer, what is stun, or why is this happening to me? You now have the full schematic, the history, the archetypes, the toolbox, and the counters. You understand the art of saying no. So the only question left is, the next time you face it, how are you going to break through that wall?